Welcome to Networking RX, a podcast devoted to helping business professionals like you enhance your networking skills in order to become more proficient giving and receiving quality business referrals and improving the overall quality of your life and the lives of those around you. The Networking RX podcast is a production of AmSpirit Business Connections, an organization whose mission is to empower business success through networking.
As you might know, years ago when I started consulting, I worked at a big firm, prestigious firm. You go, you're everybody's putting on airs and everybody's trying to be impressive, and that's just it's the name of the game, right? Or at least you think it is. And at that time, I thought leadership meant, having all the answers. Oh, good God, you didn't want to be wrong on anything. And I could just tell there were people who, they would fake it, and I would feel bad. I didn't want to fake it, but I'd feel bad when I didn't have an answer on something. I was a tax consultant. Geez, I should have the answer, even though this is so complicated. You had to be decisive on things. You had to be confident. You always had to be right. But what I learned, and often the hard way, is that people didn't really need me to be the smartest person in the room or need anybody to be the smartest person in the room. The people who elevated themselves the most were the people who did a good job of understanding what's going on with other people and really caring about other people. And that changed how I thought about leadership. And the people I thought were good leaders. There were people who were incredibly bright, who really didn't care. And then there were other people who, I remember one story, I was working late and I was just kind of panicked on a project. And this partner said, I'm not leaving until you leave. I'm like, really? Wow. He had no idea what I was working on. So anyhow, that's a great lead into our guest today. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Melissa Robinson Weinmiller, and she spends her time helping leaders rethink what real leadership actually looks like, especially when it comes to empathy and emotional intelligence. What I appreciate about her work is that she doesn't treat empathy as a nice idea, but really as a practical skill that changes how teams perform and how people show up for other people, which is incredibly important. She's a TEDx speaker, emotional intelligence coach, or EQ coach, I guess, and author of The Empathetic Leader. So, Melissa, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me, Frank. I'm so excited to be here and get to have this conversation with you.
Well, how did you get into this? I mean, it's I mean, it's just at some point you're like, okay, this is fascinating, right?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. I mean, the interrelation of human beings in general is fascinating because we're kind of a messed up species on the whole. So, trying to understand people and why they do what they do is just really interesting, I think.
Oh, yeah, you're in the right crowd because I do too. It's incredibly complicated. People are like, well, chemistry is hard, physics is hard. It's really not, because two chemicals interact the exact same way pretty much every time, all else being equal. Two people, 2 different days, 2 different hours of a day, it can be totally different.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, watching the interaction, whether it's between two people or groups of people or countries, and you're throwing in different cultural ideas and backgrounds and, gender and race and religion and all of, it all goes together. And then to actually try and figure out why people do what they do and why they do these things over and over again, right? So you're seeing these patterns occurring. It is fascinating. And the thing is I think for me, like a lot of people, I kind of wanted to know more about it because I came out of such a horrible work situation. I was like, these people have no empathy. They're not listening. So long story short, I was a musician and loved it. I was a French horn player. I got to tour. I got to go to different places. I got to do stuff. And I ended up getting a professorship to actually teach French horn, after I got my first doctorate, which is, usually people don't even know a French horn professor. So the fact that I actually found a job as a French horn professor,
right,
it's a minor miracle in itself. But I was assaulted by one of my colleagues shortly after taking this job. And the thing is this system that I was in, that was bad, but then it just kept getting worse
When you
because
say assaulted, like verbally or physically or
physically.
okay, all right. I don't
Yeah.
want to redredge that up, but just to clarify. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's it, it happened. But trying to talk to people, trying to talk to my boss, who
Hmm.
insisted that if I was junior female faculty and I'm stirring up trouble, I'm never going to get promoted. Well, I didn't care about being promoted. I cared
Yeah.
about being safe in a town where I didn't know anybody and was far away from family and had no idea what to do. When I went to his boss, I was told if I didn't like it, I could leave. Well, how many
Yeah.
French horn professorships are there? Where am I going to go?
Yeah.
And it was this way anyway. I went the whole system because it was the culture of the place. It didn't matter if I went to HR or to the union or the
Yeah.
ombuds or whoever. And eventually I lost my career in music because of it. And I know other people that have lost careers because of horribly toxic situations where there was this lack of empathy. And I don't think at the time I could have said, this is a lack of empathy. I don't think I had that kind of grasp on it, but I knew something was missing and I knew it was something that was very basic and human.
Right.
And, after I got out, I mean, after I left, COVID happened shortly after, and that was the end of it. That was the end of my music career, and it was all I had known. But I just couldn't quite let it go that what is this that's missing? And
Yeah.
I started doing some consulting with my husband in the healthcare arena, and I kept seeing the same things popping up over and over again.
Yeah.
And these businesses were losing profit, productivity, and innovation from their people because of it. And it's like, not only is this not working, but these people are chopping off their own foot.
Yeah.
And what's missing? And that's how I kind of came to the idea that this could be empathy, that this is what we're missing. And I kind of threw myself in and never looked
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. Well, you heard my lead in, leaders, they hear the word empathy and many still think that it means being softer, lowering standards. How do you help these leaders see empathy as not a liability, but really as an asset? Because I mean, the guy who took over the firm where I was at, if he was in charge when I was there, I would still be there. He's just a wonderful human being. Um, the two or three people before him, uh, more like your experience as the French horn professor. Maybe not quite that bad. I was never assaulted, so I don't want to equivocate those things, but it was just like, hey, what are your numbers? It's like, geez, my grandma died,
Yeah,
you know?
yeah,
So how do you get
exactly.
them to see those things?
Well, I think the first thing we have to do is get rid of some of the myths because I mean, people have this idea that empathy is all puppies and rainbows and fluffiness, and
Hmm.
it's not. There's this myth that empathy is just, I feel what you feel. And that kind of empathy is one. But there's been 43 different kinds of definitions of empathy. There's multiple kinds of empathy. I actually teach three of them when I work with leaders. So just this idea that it's all feelings and fluffiness
Hmm.
is the first myth that's got to go because it's just not true.
Yeah.
The other thing is this idea that having empathy means you don't have boundaries. And that's not right either. I mean, you can have empathy and still be strong. You can have empathy and still actually be an effective and efficient leader.
Hmm.
And we need to get rid of this idea that it's either or.
Yeah. No, I mean, um, it is a necessity. And there has to be boundaries. You
Yeah.
talk a lot about, in looking at your stuff, empathy in society, not just in the workplace. What are you seeing right now that makes empathy more necessary than ever? And here we're recording. It's January 2026. What I'll tend to do is recycle these, right? So this might come out again 4 or 5 years from now after the Trump administration. And I'm not trying to get political here, but we're just really in a heightened, um, it can be bad. Not always bad, but it can be bad.
Yeah. Well, I think part of it is there is a real lack of empathy right now if we actually break it down to brass tacks and talk definitions. Because the definition of empathy isn't about feeling, it's about perspective taking. It's
Right.
about taking the time to understand the other person and where they're at. And I think we're missing a lot of that right now.
I
There's a
agree.
lot of main character syndrome happening, where people feel that spotlight on them and it's about them. And part of it is our society. There's been studies that show that social media encourages this kind of behavior because you do have the spotlight on you, right? It's your account, it's your media,
Yeah.
or uh, just there's a lot of different things that feed into it, and a lot of authors that are looking at this. But we have somehow lost this understanding that we need to know where the other person is coming from, and until we can actually be able to integrate that back in as an actionable skill, not as just a nice idea, but as something we actionably do, I don't know that it's going to get a whole lot better right away.
Yeah. Well, I think it starts at the individual level, right?
Yes.
I can't choose what other people do. I can't.
Right.
Right or left, whatever. I can't choose. I can choose me.
Right.
And it doesn't matter what I think. It doesn't matter what you think. It's how you behave. And when I interact with people, and in my business, um, I run networking groups, right? And so I've got not hundreds. I've got dozens of these groups. Thousands of members. Um, and I have groups that are very right leaning, and I have groups that are very left leaning, and they're all really great people. It's
Right.
it's and they'll have families that they love. They're all just trying to make a buck so they can pay the mortgage. And to me, it's fascinating because if you dial it, if you really kind of distill it down, and I think there are studies out there, we all really kind of think the same way, right? And here's my example. On some level, we all believe in gun control. We do. Nobody wants a kindergartner to bring a gun to school.
No.
Okay, so we all agree, and so it's a question where that line's at, right? And that's what we're all in. And you can pick any political thing, any economic thing. It's a question of where is that line being drawn, and we're arguing about where that line is being drawn. And I think in the United States we have the blessing of being able to argue about where that line is being drawn, whereas in other places around the world, you're told where the line is, and that's just the way it is. So I really try to understand people, and again, it's not even political. A lot of times it can be just business related, where somebody, I remember back when I was an attorney, having somebody not pay a bill and just being just so angry about it, Melissa. I was so mad. And then just realizing, okay, there's something going on in this person's world.
Yes.
I don't know what it is. They're not going to tell me what it is because it's because they feel vulnerable. They don't, whatever. Maybe they've got a gambling problem. I don't know. It doesn't matter. But just realizing they're just not a bad person. There's something going on, and being able to kind of, yeah, I still would like the money, but being able to try and move beyond it. And I think
Yeah.
that's how we need to. I don't know if that's empathy or not, but it made me feel better, and that's all I could do.
Yeah. No, it absolutely is, because you're looking beyond the situation and saying, well, why?
Hmm.
Why does this person believe this? Why does this person think this? What else is going on there? And so back to, the conversation on human behavior. It's not necessarily going to make that action any better. I mean, it's not necessarily going to say, well, yeah, okay, fine, don't pay your bills. But it does make it so that you understand why the behavior is happening. Where is this coming from? Because this person's never done this before, or even like back to the gun control issue. If I'm talking about to someone and it's a heated topic like that, I don't necessarily want to push my agenda. I want to know why they think what they
Yeah.
think. Where did you get that from? Why do you believe that? Tell me more, because
Yeah.
there's so much more to this than I know about. And if this is your behavior and what you believe, there are going to be others. So by helping me understand you, you're helping me understand others as well. And maybe in the end, even understand myself a little better.
Yeah. This conversation again, there's a lot of political stuff going on right now that we kind of get pulled in that direction. But I
Mhm.
remember when I was in business school, I was in a joint program. So I spent a couple of years in business school while I was getting my law degree. We had a negotiation class, and they gave us a case study to negotiate. And um, what we found at the end, I don't need to get into the whole thing, but we found at the end is just like each of us had a different set of facts. We all had the same facts, but we had different motivations that we didn't reveal to one another. So for me, I had to get the most rent I could get. And for them, they had to get the biggest signage they could get. Right. And so it was kind of competing sorts of things. And when we stepped back and dissected it, it was like, oh, okay. If we would have had the conversation about gun control, about economics, or about these rental facts, and you didn't share the facts, not because you weren't allowed to, but you thought you weren't supposed to. It's negotiation, right? I've got to, it's a zero-sum game. I win, you lose, you win, I lose, right?
Right.
But if we would have sat down and really kind of had a calm conversation about what is it you want? I really need to get a big sign. I can make that happen. I really need you to pay this rent, Well, I can make that happen if I get a big sign, it would have been beautiful, but we didn't do it. And so I look at that with respect to other things, and it's just being willing to step back and say, okay, what's going on here? And I don't know that that will always happen. So, now, how do you, how does emotional intelligence and empathy actually work together day to day, especially in tough conversations and high pressure moments? I mean, it's easy to say, "Oh, I'm kind,"
Yes.
when you're checking checkbooks full and everything's going, had a good night's sleep. It's easy to be that person. It's where we fall down in moments of stress and moments of, scarcity. Yeah. That's where it's hard.
Yeah, it is, because now you're feeling that pressure, and it's even harder to turn the lens outward and take the perspective of the other when you're worried about what's happening in your own world, in your own head. And that's natural. That's how we react. So if we think about emotional intelligence, right, it goes all the way back to Daniel Goleman's book, which was published in 1995. So, and the first article on emotional intelligence was 1990, which means we've been wrestling around with this now for 36 years.
It's still infancy, though, right?
It is. We're still learning about it all the time.
Yeah.
But if you think about Daniel Goleman's book, right, because this was kind of like the first time we heard about this, and it was like, oh, what's this? This is something that could completely transform what we do. He broke emotional intelligence down into like 5 or 6 different things. And one was technical skills, and there's communication and motivation, and there's all these things that were in there, and empathy was one. And so if you think of this as like a tool bag, and in this tool bag, you've got, motivation and communication and hammers and chisels and saws and screwdrivers and whatever you want. I think that, and this cuts me out as being just a little bit different, that you actually take empathy out of that tool bag and put it first. So that if you have the empathy to understand the perspective of the other person, when you reach into that tool bag, whether you want a chisel or a left-handed screwdriver. Because otherwise, we've got all these emotional intelligence skills, and you can say, well, I'm kind, well, I communicate well, I can motivate. But if you don't know the person you're communicating to, if you don't have the perspective of the person that you're trying to motivate, it makes it a lot harder to use those emotional intelligence skills effectively.
Yeah. No, I mean, it's I don't know if well, that makes sense. I don't know enough about emotional intelligence to just definitively say I agree, but I don't know enough to say I disagree either. And I don't want to. You said you're different. Okay, that's fine. I don't know who else is out there. That's great.
That's okay. I mean, and it's like you said, we're still learning and we're still doing stuff. It's not like this is what it is and this is how it works. So this is how I see it, and other people are welcome to see how they see it. And like I said, as I learn from them, it might change how I view it too.
Yeah. Well, it's, we are in the infancy of this, and we are in the infancy of this, but while you were telling your story and I was thinking about mine and thinking about other people that I know out there, I have this theory, and I'm not going to go get my PhD and try and sort it all out. And I had this theory when I was working in public accounting, and this was in the 80s and the early 90s, before this was even really a thing. I mean, it was out there, but really wasn't a thing. It was still kind of locked up in academia.
Yeah.
is that the bad bosses, the bad people advanced. The good people could always find other opportunities, and the bad people got rid of the bad people, or the non-empathetic people got rid of the underperformers, and the performers didn't want to have to deal with that bad boss. They're going to go find a good boss. And so what was left behind in a lot of corporate structures were these people who they're just going to move forward. And that sent the message to other people that, okay, I guess you have to be unempathetic to move ahead in the world. And
Yeah.
to a degree, it kind of perpetuates itself. And maybe that's changing. I don't know. I mainly deal with small business people, and small business people, you have to be empathetic. I mean, well, you're a small business person, right? I mean, you can't get hung up on, you know, whatever. You just clients come out, client opportunities come along. Okay, I got to deal with it. You know,
Yeah.
um, it's not
Yeah.
going to be a perfect situation. So
Absolutely. But I mean, I think that's just dealing with people,
yeah,
because you're always, behavior is always on a spectrum. So you're always
yeah,
going to have, the different, like when you think about empathy, right? One side all the way over here, you're going to have dark triad, which are people that have no empathy, which
yeah,
is psychopaths and sociopaths, narcissists and Machiavellians. On the other side, we actually have what's called light triad. And of course, nobody talks about that because that's more what we want. And
yeah,
that's where you're going to put the people that are humanitarians and who really want to be able to make these connections and do it effectively every time. But most of us are going to fall somewhere in the middle where,
yeah.
we maybe show our narcissism on occasion because these are behavioral traits. So it isn't like black and white. We tend to show a little bit of all of it,
Right,
for those of us that occupy this middle ground. So, most people that we run into are going to be somewhere in that big hump in the middle, and you're going to get a little bit
right.
of everything. And that's
It,
just the beauty of our species, I guess.
yeah. Well, it's like I said earlier, it changes day to day. It
Yeah.
can, I have good days and I have bad days. And um, sometimes I can recognize those and just know, you know what, this is kind of a bad day. Just why don't you just stay off the phone or just,
Yeah.
certainly don't pick it up. Maybe not answer it, or sit on emails before you respond. So I love about ChatGPT. I can run in, okay, here's my response. Can you soften it for me? Right. And that's probably
Yes,
saved me. That's worth the subscription to ChatGPT alone right there. It's just, you know,
it
um,
is. Take out the tone. That,
yeah, yeah. You want to make this lighter? Do you want to make it firmer? No, I don't want to make it firmer,
yeah.
That's why I'm coming to you. But I can, again, I can see where you would want to do that. Um, for someone who's listening and they feel stretched, is there one simple thing they can do? Well, pick up the phone and call you or get a hold of you. But I mean, are there, just kind of, hey, in the moment, I got to do something here. Um,
Yeah. So I find with leaders, one of the main things that they tend to miss right off the bat is self-empathy because they're very driven. They're, very highly self-actualized. They're very motivated. But also, for the most part, they want to give and they'll show empathy to others much more readily than show it to themselves. And when you think about it, I mean, leaders have like a 35% burnout rate. They have much higher rates of substance abuse, they have much higher rates of family problems. And there's a reason why. And I think this lack of self empathy is a big part of it because it gets so easy to get so caught up in what you're doing and so driven that you just leave yourself out altogether.
yeah, yeah. No, there's so much to this. Um, all right. So your book is The Empathetic Leader. I guess let's shift gears and talk about, well, let me say this. I say this all the time. You don't make any money selling a book. You probably get 82 cents a copy. I have books. I know
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
so you can't even really get a meal out. I mean, it's, anyhow, what type of work do you do? Who you're looking to find, who you're looking to be introduced to, that would be helpful for us.
So I work a lot with leaders. I do a lot of one-on-one coaching, but interestingly, I tend to work with mid-level leaders.
Okay.
like director and above. And that's because they're the ones that can see both up and down, and they can
Yeah.
say, we can't keep going like this. With something needs to change. And they're the ones that are going to be in the C-suite in the future. They're the ones that
Yeah.
are going to rise up through the company and be able to actually work these, empathetic ideas into how they lead. Sometimes the top levels, they're not so into making any changes because what they've done is gotten them where they're at, and they don't necessarily want to make big changes and have big ideas. But
Yeah.
the mid-level, the ones that can really see and say, yeah, this just isn't going to work, especially with the upcoming generations. They're the
Yeah.
ones that's where my hope's at.
Yeah. Well, I think where you're operating is somebody who's already a C level, unless they're at risk of really just screwing it up because of how they operate. They're already there. They've got relationships with the board, and the board needs them as much as they need the board. But I can
Yeah,
see where those mid-level people are like, I'm trying to navigate. I'm trying to navigate one more step up the ladder.
right.
And all of a sudden, skill sets, being an accountant or whatever is just not going to cut it. And you have to really delve into those soft skills.
Yeah.
Best way to get a hold of you.
My website.
Okay.
So if you go to EQ Via, and that's V as in Victor, IA empathy.com, that's where you can find me. And everything is there. You can buy my book there. You can link to my TEDx there. I have a contact sheet. People contact me for speaking or for coaching or any of that. And you can sign up. I do have a newsletter that goes out once a week. So
Okay.
that's kind of an all-in-one spot.
Okay. Well, I will get that in the show notes, so people have it. Most people listen to this are driving, so it's a perfect. They're not taking notes; they'll just go to the show notes and get it.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate your time today. This is a fascinating conversation. I'm very interested in the topic.
Well, thanks so much for having me on, because this is more of a mission for me than anything. I want people to start rethinking what empathy is and how they can use it, and maybe begin to use it a little bit more. Because if we could raise empathy in our society by 1%, it would make a huge difference.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thanks for joining us on the Networking RX podcast. Please put what you've learned into action today and let us know if you have questions, comments, or ideas for future topics. You can email them to us at podcast@amspirit.com. That's AmSpirit.com. Finally, so you never miss an episode, be sure to subscribe to the Networking RX podcast through iTunes, Overcast, or however you receive your podcasts. Now get out and network with someone.
The Networking RX podcast is the copyright production of AmSpirit Business Connection. All rights reserved.